one of the things that we are busy with these days between Yom Kippur and Sukkot is the act of course, making a sukkah. Now, there's a halacha that comes up that's relevant every year, and that's relevant with all types of sukkahs, but becomes particularly relevant for that common sukkah made of tarp. And that is that the pasuk says, "Chaka sukkos ta'aseh lecha," that you should make for yourself. There is actually a mitzvah, whether it's midoraisa, whether it's a hechsher mitzvah, exactly the level of a mitzvah, but there is some mitzvah. What's unique to sukkahs, the sukkah, is that building itself, not only sitting in is a sukkah, but building itself is also a mitzvah. And the Gemara makes a drasha of ta'aseh lecha, that you should make it ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asri, that one needs to use a sukkah that was made in a kosher manner, and not one that was already existent. What does that mean? So the Gemara gives a case that where one takes a haystack and hollows out the inside and sits in it as a sukkah. Says the Gemara, that's not kosher because that's ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asri. Now, the Ramah points out that that means that not only can one not use such a situation, but there's also a prohibition to lay the schach down before the walls are up. In other words, that the schach needs to be laid on a kosher sukkah. Where does the Ramah get that from? Because we have this idea of ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asri, and says the Ramah, the primary sukkah, what makes the sukkah really kosher is the schach. The Gemara tells us, ikar sukkah nikra al shem schach, that the primary aspect of the sukkah is indeed the schach. And therefore, says the Ramah, at the moment in which we lay down the schach, it must be that it's already that it becomes a kosher sukkah. So that means that, for example, for a canvas sukkah, if one puts the frame up but doesn't yet have the canvas itself up, so there are not walls, and one lays the sukkah before the canvas, that's actually a problem of ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asri, which the Levush and others actually say is even pasul b'diavad, that even that one doesn't fulfill a mitzvah at all in that way. Now, the Bach takes issue with this, and the Bach writes that no. The Ramah is taking this Gemara, this idea of ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asri too far. Says the Bach, what's the case of the Gemara with the hay? What the case is that it wasn't even made in the first place l'shem sukkah. Not that it had to be made, and the minute that it was laid, it had to become a kosher sukkah, but rather that it needs to be made for the sake of a sukkah. So that haystack that was there previously was not made for a sukkah at all. If one has what happens to be a kosher sukkah outside, but when one has it there year round and just uses it for shade, and now comes sukkah and says, "Oh, I'm going to use it as my sukkah," that's a problem, because the schach, says the Bach, needs to be laid l'shem mitzvah, but not that it necessarily needs to be the final thing that it's laid only on a kosher sukkah. So the Bach takes issue. However, the Mishnah Berurah points out that many poskim do agree with the Ramah that in fact it's a problem of ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asri, and that it needs to be at the very least lechatchila. Some would even say b'diavad, that it needs to be that the schach is the last thing put down, that it's put down on a kosher sukkah. Now, what happens if one doesn't do this? If one puts the schach when it's not yet a kosher sukkah, so there is a trick. Instead of redoing the whole thing, if one simply shakes and lifts up a little bit the schach, then that as well, because that's an action which is like laying down the schach. This is also relevant if one has a non-Jew build their sukkah. If one has a non-Jew build their sukkah and the schach as well, then the Jew should make sure to shake the schach or do some action that it's the Jew itself who is laying the schach, because that's the ikar mitzvah, and that's avoiding the concern of ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asri. Have a fantastic day.